Greetings from Castle Goring, from Nikki, Aurora, and from me. Well, today we continue with my interview with Samantha about the machinations that the Meghan crew have been imposing upon the royal family, and in particular upon Prince William, the Princess of Wales, and the three children, and of course all of the peripheral characters who have ended up sort of being clipped as the guns have blazed. Hopefully, you will continue to enjoy it.
Satan would be on the throne first.
I agree. I agree. I agree. And also, when you stop to think that she did that swan dive, mockery of the curtsy, while the Queen was alive, because that was filmed while the Queen was alive. And Harry and Meghan, I know this as a fact, had been asked up to Balmoral with the children. Rooms had been prepared for them. I said it at the time. I had impeccable information with this regard. The Queen knew she was dying. She wanted to say goodbye to Harry, notwithstanding all the problems that had happened. And let's remember, there are many people who think that Harry and Meghan's conduct helped to bring on the Queen's bone cancer, because she was subjected to so much stress between Harry and Meghan and the Virginia Giuffre Prince Andrew business. And quite possibly she could have survived one, but the combination together, no. And the Andrew thing was latterly, while the Harry and Meghan thing. And there's an awful lot that went on behind the scenes that the public still doesn't know about. And it really sort of broke the Queen's heart that Harry could betray her and betray their love and betray his upbringing and betray his duty to her as his commander-in-chief and as the monarch, and that they could betray the gift that she had given them in terms of the platform with the Commonwealth. And they refused to accept the invitation. Well, of course, the word in certain circles was that they dared not accept the invitation because it included having their children along. And they were evidently very worried that if the children were there, questions that have been raised behind the scenes could have been brought rather more to the fore. But it doesn't alter the fact that she, the late Queen, was heartbroken that Harry had behaved the way he had behaved. And also, if half of the things that are mooted behind the scenes that have not come out are true, I mean, Harry and Meghan's behavior has been infinitely worse than anybody believes. And
Yes.
so and yeah, I agree. The public will never forgive that. And not only in Britain, but in the Commonwealth, because, Meghan played the colour card for all it was worth to create as much conflict and allow her the latitude to misbehave the way she has misbehaved. But even in the Commonwealth, people have come to realize that she is extremely Machiavellian and wildly inconsistent, and that she's not a victim at all. What do you think?
And people have asked me that about my sister. People have thrown around the word evil and said, oh, she could be, this and that, and she's very clever and very cunning. But I disagree with that on the grounds that if she was so clever and so cunning and brilliant enough to make it work, everything she has attempted would not have failed. In other words, it doesn't seem to take long before she shows her true colors. And if someone is Machiavellian, they are an expert at being able to build someone up to break them down. And ultimately, you'd like a win-win situation when Machiavelli is applied to leadership and politics. But for someone who is not mentally equipped to play with that sort of political strategy, it results in failure every time, because the charm in the beginning might work, but what she doesn't have is the ability to create a win-win. You know, the charm thing doesn't last very long. You have to be able to deliver enough to get people eating out of your hand. There has to be a give and a take on the way up. And it's always seemingly one-sided with her. So I don't think she doesn't know anything about Machiavelli.
May I cut you and say I couldn't agree more,
Yeah,
because my observation of her has been that she sets up situations for people to lose.
right.
She thinks she's being Machiavellian, and she is being Machiavellian in terms of scheming. She's just not implementing the prince of Machiavelli, which is it's the scheming has a purpose, and it is for the good of the nation. So as far as she's concerned, it's all to do her enemies in. Now, this leads me to something we've touched upon before, because I actually think Meghan displays quite a lot of signs of paranoia. I think she is extremely, extremely self-important, which goes along with paranoia. And she senses that people are off against her when they're not. And she sets up situations, for instance, when she came into the royal family, so that she would be in, she would have an excuse to dominate proceedings. She said she's no longer in, she's here to modernize, and they need to be to have the benefit of her experience, and she is going to sorry, improve things and change things for the better, when of course it was always all about Meghan achieving her objectives and dominating. And has she always been a dominatrix? Was she, as even as a little girl?
As I've said before, I didn't really notice it until she was about 11 going on 12. I saw some little shifty, some mood changes, some arrogant little moments. But, you know, when kids are adolescents, you just think, oh, they're, you know, toying with their self identity. She's social referencing. This is how they learn their place in the world with others. And they experiment with responses and moods, and just to learn from them and grow. And so I wrote off much of what she did as, oh, she's just a teenager. They can be cocky at times, not knowing that some teenagers are statistical outliers, not being able to foresee, because I wasn't familiar with psychology then, not being able to foresee what was really going on as an undercurrent. But it grew, and I think she learned when she would, for example, manipulate dad, when she would ice dad if she didn't get her way, as you saw her little thing with Gigi Perot,
Yes.
the party witness to that. I think she learned from responses to those control mechanisms that at times they can be successful. And I think over the years, she started honing that as a craft. But it backfired, because I think, again, as you just said, you know, in a Machiavelli situation, you want a win-win. That's the only way it can work. Otherwise, it's entirely destructive, where it's entirely selfish. And I think she kept hitting those walls, but didn't have the heart and the soul to understand why it wasn't working. You can't play Machiavelli and put yourself in positions where you want to work with and even control people, and you have a bigger goal, not only where it's entirely selfish, but where you don't have the experience, and you can't call yourself a humanitarian as the facade while you are practicing something completely different. Okay, well, where are all of the donations? When you showed up at the fires, did you offer anything, to people who don't have homes anymore? When the women in Great Britain in the shelter, who were sex workers, during the winter were freezing, did you give them coats and boots from Reitman's? No, you gave them bananas that said "be strong" on them in a paper sack.
And also, she said, "You are loved." I mean,
You are.
you are loved. I mean, you are giving workers who are selling the illusion of love, and you are saying you are loved. Who are they? I mean, it was so wildly inappropriate. But
And a slap in the face if these women don't have jobs or homes and it's freezing in the winter. It's a slap in the face to say, "Here, I love you. I'm giving you a paper sack and bananas that I've written on." It's like, thanks, but no thanks. I
have
thought that
you,
was incredibly.
can I say, have you noticed in her series Was Never? She always has a glass of alcohol nearby or in her hand. Did you know? And sometimes this is before midday. I
Mhm.
mean, and she is an avowed foodie who loves drink. I mean, I am beginning to wonder if Meghan hasn't uh, developed alternative ways of coping that could lead one to suppose that maybe there's a reason why she's flying high in the stratosphere. And it may not only be because Doria used to smoke crack and drink and do weed while she was pregnant with Meghan. Maybe there are more contemporary habits that allow Meghan to be perpetually a high flyer. Let's put it that way. Have you
Well,
noticed that?
from what I've seen, that particular brand of rosé has an extraordinarily high amount of alcohol content in it. I thought that was interesting. But she should also know, I think Lori Grenier and other people would say, a lot of people are not drinking alcohol anymore, and they're certainly not consuming it regularly. Yes, there are aficionados and connoisseurs who still partake, but I think for the most part, from what I've seen, alcohol sales have dropped. So to push something like that, um, and to seemingly be drinking it herself, maybe it is a crutch, a coping strategy, if you will, because her plans are not working out the way she wanted them to. Again, it's if she and Harry are predicating themselves on the idea of mental health, and they're seemingly, I guess the company that is doing this award, uh Harry and Meghan have half ownership in, so essentially they're giving themselves an award. But you're giving yourselves an award as being humanitarians. I think that's also a coping strategy. Okay, nobody else is making us feel good, nobody else is giving us accolades. Come on, we got to do something. Let's have all sorts of crutches to deflect from reality, to cope with the fact that the plane isn't flying properly. It's kind of flopping and may hit a mountain figuratively. Their plans are not working out. So I'm curious to see what the rest of the year and next year will be like. I think they know this is not sustainable. Uh, it's become comedy. I see comedians everywhere having a field day with this. So, in my opinion, Harry has swapped out his royal military uniform for a court jester outfit. And I guess if it fits, but
I actually feel a little bit sorry for him because I am not convinced that Harry is totally in the loop where some of Meghan's machinations are concerned. And your father told me once that when he was on the phone to Meghan, she was pretty brutal and harsh in tone. And as soon as Harry walked into the room, and she couldn't have been more sweetness and light. And as soon as he left the room, she was back to being toughy. And and that is one of the people who has told me, because other people have witnessed this. Uh,
but But on the other hand, the newness of a relationship, the honeymoon period, back then, of course, there were times when, in my opinion, seemingly she was on her best behavior. But familiarity breeds contempt, we all know. And as time passed, Harry seemingly became more vicious and boisterous, writing spare, the nasty, horrible things, in my opinion, that he said in Spare, and partaking in her activities and machinations. I mean, I think he became an accomplice of sorts. And that's also evidenced by the fact that, in my opinion, he can't play innocent because, with regards to finding freedom and the dismissal in the Judge Warby case, Jason Knopf, the email that he sent to Jason Knopf that Jason shared with the media, Harry said, and don't quote me because this is not verbatim, but it is, I would say, 99% accurate. He said, "Oh, yes, but we want to be able to say that we were not involved.
oh,
We
that's
have to,
right.
we
That's
have to be able to say that we were not involved." So,
possible deniability. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, that's yeah.
so
So Harry and Meg, Harry also plays it, and this is particularly relevant at the moment in
mm,
terms of what is going on in the United Kingdom, because Harry was over here. Harry spun a perfunctory visit with the king
mm,
of 25 minutes into a 45-minute love fest, promptly went to Ukraine, gave an interview to The Guardian, which is an anti-monarchist newspaper, saying that he stands by everything he has ever said in Spare, and that he was not bad-mouthing the family, that he was simply correcting misconceptions. Uh, and then the next thing you knew was Page Six, and also, of course, Meghan and Harry's latest mouthpiece is Us Weekly in the United States, because the editor used to be the editor of People. And
right.
so you had all of these American publications then saying, oh, it was the most gorgeous, heartfelt reunion. They collapsed into each other's arms, crying with delight. And Harry handed over a photograph of Meghan and himself and the children. And of
Mhm.
course, that created far more tears of gratitude from the king. And they sort of then spent the next 45 minutes having a total love fest, all of which I knew was rubbish and said at the time was rubbish. But now Harry has then been able to use all of this to say, when I said, because I'm the one who said it first, I said, this is all rubbish, and this is what has gone on, and Meghan and this, Harry has that, and I said, wait for it. It's only a matter of time before the Mail and Rebecca English and Richard Eden and Charlotte Griffiths weighed in, and each of them has waded in with a totally different denial. But I said, I'm telling you, this is what I've been told, and this is rubbish. And wait for them to reveal it, which everybody waited a week or 10, and it's all been revealed by them now. But now you have other fairly reputable and some very reputable journalists also being fed misinformation that you know, it's the basic tactic of the royal family to brief against each other, and the palace, because the palace then came out and said, sorry, this is utter rubbish. uh
My goodness.
you know, Harry, it was a perfectly anodyne, almost, because I had said Harry was treated like a low-grade functionary. And then the palace confirmed that by saying he was treated as if he were an official, uh, and that there was not this great love fest. So the palace actually then came out and rebutted Harry and Meghan's claims, because Harry was already and Meghan were positioning themselves with the hypothesis that Harry was now going to be half in, half out, and that William needed him as his half-time wingman, and blah blah blah. And on the back of all of that, you now have briefings from the Meganian and the Heroldian camp say, you see, we are always briefed against. It's We only said nice things when in fact they said lies, and they said lies that were going to boost them and big them up. And so the palace punctured the balloon, and now you have Harry and Meghan with many reputable uh, journalists saying, "Oh, poor Harry, he's being victimized." I mean, I just think, well, this is such a bizarre game, and I get why the public often have no idea which end is up. But
Well, and I think that's due in part to the fact that the public don't know that a lot of those media outlets are paid suck ups. That's what we call them. They're paid suck ups. And Harry and Meghan have been reportedly top heavy in paying for favorable PR for themselves and disparaging PR for those who challenge their narrative. So, including the royal family. But I think, again, those paid suck ups are dropping off, whether it's that they're not, the paychecks are bouncing, or they simply realize, oh, they woke up and had an epiphany. Holy cow, what am I doing? I'm batting for the wrong team. And I think there's a component to that too. But still, there are some who won't let their teeth out of it, because I think if they do stop favoring them, then they're acquiescing in their own minds to the fact that they've been screwing up all along and batting for the wrong team. Oh my God. If I start, batting for the royal family, then I'm acquiescing that all along I've been pretty horrible rooting for Harry and Meghan. So I think they're
well, may I say you are hitting the nail very firmly on the head, with a lot of reputable journalists who have an American profile, chief of
right.
whom is Tina Brown.
Mm-mm.
Tina was so, because she had to be initially, because of her connections with Vanity Fair, the Daily Beast, and just for her own reputation, she had to be very pro Meghan and anti the royal family and the royal system. And now that things have evolved to the extent they have, she's now on Substack. She comes out with 60% anti-Harry and Meghan and the truth, and 40% the old rubbish that is repeated. And the inconsistency is wild. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, my duty as a biographer is to get to the reality of the situation. And I have always aimed to be as real as possible and as realistic as possible. Sorry. And that's why ultimately, no matter the wavering and the chopping and changing, my position has a visible line, while some of the others, it's chop and change. But I think also, Samantha, there's another element to it, is that a lot of the journalists don't want this drama to end because it's a great money spinner for everybody.
Bingo.
You
You
know,
know, yeah, I mean, God forbid their paychecks should stop or they, but what they don't realize is that they will still get paid handsomely for putting the emphasis on the right syllable, for rooting for Prince William and Princess Catherine and the monarchy to become stronger. And they're failing to realize that when the doo doo hits the fan, when there is that change of the throne, they then, if they're so worried about their paychecks, they will probably not have jobs. And if they do, they won't be taken too seriously because they will have been, so combative. And so that's what happens when you bat for the wrong team.
darling,
I think
they will
it
do so. They
to
will do
switch.
they will do a Tina Brown. They will jump horse in midstream because that's what they will do, you know. But of course, when you say about the change of monarch, this comes back to the original point, which is what about Queen Meghan? Ah.
Let's just put the crown on my brother's head right now. He will be queen before she will, in my opinion. He looked better on him as a queen than I would on her.
Well, listen,
Uh,
my dear, on that note, I'm going to say, unless you have, oh no, I want to ask you before you go, because I'm sure people will want to know, what's happening about the appeal?
I haven't heard. So, Peter, the lawyers went, they stated, presented their statements, and so the appeal panel has not returned a decision. So we wait, and whatever happens in the universe, I'm good. I'm pretty resilient. So I would like to see justice be done. It's been a long time. I can't get back that 7 years of my life. And I found out some pretty horrible stuff about what was going on behind closed doors. But like Prince William would probably not be shocked by anything my sister and Harry do. I was early on, I'm not now. So it's, as my father always says, it is what it is. And I'll leave it there.
Well, you see, you know from your own experience how Machiavellian and conniving and basically very destructively targeted Meghan
Mm-hmm.
is, and how she decides that she is going to destroy opponents and sets about to destroy them, because you don't you think that's what she tried to do with you?
But I think it's like a sloppy pool player. You might get one or two good shots in. You might have your eye on the ball. You might have that pool stick lined up. I'm not a pool player. I'm just saying hypothetically. And you might get one or two shots, but then the rest of the table goes to the other player because you're not savvy. You didn't take the time to do your due diligence and learn. And I'm saying about foreign affairs, about people, about humanity, about politics. You can't play sloppy pool in the game of life at that level and expect to win the game. And clearly she's the balls aren't going in the pockets that she wants them to go in. I think the outcome is very predictable. So
Thank God. Thank God she's a bad pool player. Thank God, because if she had been a good pool player because she is so targeted, and she is so targeted upon being lethal that had she not been a bad pool player, I mean, when you stop to think the havoc she has created ever since she entered the British royal family, and that's being a bad pool player. Can you imagine if she'd been hitting the balls in wherever you hit the balls in on a pool table? I mean, we actually have two pool tables here, and I don't know how to play pool. So, but no. So I think it's wonderful that she is as inept as she is. Because
You know.
if she had not been, no, seriously, if she had not been, if Meghan's ability had been any match for her arrogance and her self-belief, she would have been, she would have been able to teach Lady Macbeth a thing or two. But as it stands, she's a very poor carbon copy of Lady Macbeth because everything she does ultimately fails. You know, I mean, she has developed the recipe for failure in the most obvious manner, really, hasn't she? And but thank God that she A doesn't have the discipline, B doesn't have the intelligence, C doesn't have the modesty, and D doesn't have the ability to have insight to actually see that she is nowhere near as effective as she thinks she is. I mean, she's confused playing Rachel Zane with being Adam Dershowitz.
Yeah. And so there's a component of fantasy there, just like the third wedding, the secret wedding that never happened. Just there's so much fantasy there that it's almost sad that this fairy tale has become, I think, a tragic comedy, more than a fairy tale, more than uh, it will be
Right.
what it is. So
No, you're right, because but it was a fairy tale and it's become a tragic comedy. And you're absolutely right. And it has because of her flaws, because she had the opportunity to swing left or right, and she swung à la gauche instead of à la droite, you know? So, listen, my dear, thank you very much for all of this. It's been, as ever, a great pleasure to see you and speak to you. Love to your father and brother, and hopefully we'll speak soon.
love to you. Thank you so much for
God
having me.
bless. Well, hopefully this has been somewhat illuminating for you, if only because it ratifies a lot of the observations that have become rather more evident and clear, and also the fact that some of what has been reported back to one about Meghan's objectives, when in the light of expert opinion, which is precisely what Samantha's is, shows really the completely bizarre nature of it all, but also shows how really what we are dealing with. I don't know what you think, but I think Nurse Ratched definitely needs to come and bring a few white coats. Although it has to be said, history is littered with overambitious people who have achieved their objectives. And on that note, I'll say thank you very much for listening. I hope this has been of some interest to you. If it has, please keep the questions and comments coming in so I will know what you would like us to be speaking about. Okay? And if you have truly enjoyed this, would you care to like, share, subscribe, press the notification bell, and Take good care. Bye bye.